My name is Ethan Cole, and I was 28 years old the morning my brother handed me a torn thrift store blazer and told me, "Don't embarrass the family this time." 3 hours later, the CEO of the company I was interviewing for stared at the loose stitching on my sleeve, stood up from the conference table, and asked a question that made my blood go cold. "Who told you to wear this? Not why are you wearing this? Not are you okay? Who told you?" And when she heard my brother's name, her entire expression changed. Because my older brother Caleb wasn't just employed at that company. He was famous there. The self-made success story. The guy who rose from poverty. The employee everyone admired for overcoming hardship. There was just one problem. Every hardship he claimed to survive belonged to me. And over the next 30 days, I discovered something even worse than the lies. My family had helped him build them. Before I continue, if you enjoy emotional family drama stories with betrayals, secrets, and satisfying endings, make sure to like and subscribe. And comment where you're watching from and what time it is there right now. I read more comments than you'd think. Now let me take you back to where this really started. I grew up in Spokane, Washington, in a house where my older brother was treated like an investment and I was treated like an expense. My father, Richard Cole, owned a small plumbing business. My mother, Denise, worked part-time at a bank. We were never rich, but we were never struggling either. Unless it involved me. Caleb got braces in high school. I got told to smile with my mouth closed. Caleb got a used Mustang for his 17th birthday. I got rides to school when someone remembered. When Caleb wanted to attend a private university in Seattle, my parents emptied savings accounts and refinanced part of the house. When I got accepted into a digital animation program 2 years later, my mother looked me dead in the face and said, "We can't keep throwing money at hobbies." So I stayed local. Community college. Night shifts at a grocery store. Freelance editing jobs online for $40 a project. Meanwhile, Caleb became the golden child success story. Every family dinner sounded the same. Caleb's networking with executives now. Caleb's company flew him to Chicago. Caleb's manager says he's leadership material. Then someone would glance at me. "You still doing those little computer drawings?" Little computer drawings. That's what my father called the work I spent 6 years teaching myself. Animation. Brand motion graphics. Commercial editing. I learned from YouTube tutorials and pirated software because I couldn't afford subscriptions. At 2 a.m. At library computers. On a second-hand laptop that overheated every 40 minutes. But none of that counted in my family because Caleb had the career. Caleb had the suit. Caleb had the story. I just didn't realize yet that he also had mine. 5 weeks ago, I saw a job listing for a motion graphics designer position at Alder Media Group, one of the best creative firms in Seattle. Full benefits. Real salary. Real clients. I almost didn't apply. Not because I wasn't qualified. Because people like me get trained to believe opportunity belongs to someone else. Still, I submitted my portfolio. 3 days later, I got an interview. And that's when everything started collapsing. The interview was on a Thursday morning. The Sunday before it, I drove to my parents' house for dinner. My mother made roast chicken. My father watched football too loudly. Caleb arrived 40 minutes late wearing a navy wool coat that probably cost more than my monthly rent. He worked in strategy consulting now. Or branding. Or something involving expensive words and airport lounges. I waited until dinner plates were half empty before speaking. "I got an interview," I said. My mother nodded absent-mindedly. "That's nice." My father didn't look up from his potatoes. "With who?" "Alder Media." That got Caleb's attention. Just for a second. Tiny pause. Fork halfway to his mouth. Then he smiled. "Ha," he said casually. "Big place." Something about his tone made my stomach tighten. "I need a suit," I said carefully. "Mine doesn't fit anymore." My mother sighed immediately like I'd asked for a yacht. "Ethan, We can't afford designer clothes right now. Designer clothes. I was asking for one decent blazer from a department store. I didn't say designer. Caleb leaned back in his chair. I've got an old suit somewhere, he said. Might still fit you. My mother brightened instantly. Perfect. That word again. Perfect. Everything was always perfect when it benefited Caleb. The next day, my mother dropped off a garment bag at my apartment. Inside was a gray blazer with shiny elbows and pants hemmed for someone at least 3 inches taller than me. The collar smelled faintly like cigarette smoke and old cologne. There was even a stain near the inside pocket. I stared at it for a long time. Then I noticed something else. One sleeve had been stitched badly by hand. Crooked black thread. Almost hidden. I tried it on anyway. Too big in the shoulders. Too loose around the waist. I looked like a teenager dressing for a school play. I almost canceled the interview. But instead I grabbed safety pins from my bathroom drawer and spent an hour pinning the fabric tighter. 4 pins in the jacket. 3 in the pants. 7 total. I remember counting them because humiliation becomes weirdly mathematical after a while. The morning of the interview, it rained hard enough to flood part of downtown Seattle. I rode the train wearing sneakers so I wouldn't ruin the only dress shoes I owned. In the station restroom, I changed clothes and stared at myself in the mirror. Pinned sleeves. Wrinkled collar. Cheap tie. I looked exactly like the kind of person my family always said I was. Not professional enough. Not polished enough. Not enough. Then I opened my portfolio on my laptop. 23 motion projects. Independent client campaigns. A music video animation with over 2 million views online. My work was good. I knew it was good. Maybe for the first time in my life, I let myself know that. So I walked upstairs into Alder Media Group. The lobby looked like a tech billionaire's living room. White marble floors. Glass walls. Employees carrying oat milk lattes and confidence. The receptionist smiled politely when she saw me. The kind of smile people give when they're already lowering expectations. I signed in. Then I rode the elevator to the 9th floor. The interview panel had 4 people. 3 recruiters. And 1 woman sitting silently at the end of the table. Mid-50s. Sharp eyes. Black turtleneck. Silver watch. Everyone else introduced themselves. She didn't. She just looked at me. Not my face first. The sleeve. The safety pin near my cuff catching the overhead light. Then the loose stitching near the shoulder. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Tell us about your work, one recruiter said. So I did. And something strange happened. The longer I talked, the quieter the room got. Not bored quiet. Focused quiet. I explained pacing. Visual rhythm. Brand motion psychology. I walked them through a campaign redesign I'd done for a local nonprofit that increased engagement by 62%. One recruiter stopped taking notes halfway through and just listened. The woman in black never looked away from me once. At the end, the recruiters thanked me and left. Only the woman stayed. She stood slowly, walked around the table, and without saying a word, she removed her tailored charcoal blazer and handed it to me. Put this on, she said. I blinked. What? Put it on. I obeyed. It fit perfectly. Then she asked, who told you to wear that suit? Not what? Oh. My brother gave it to me. What's his name? Caleb Cole. Something cold flashed behind her eyes. Then she sat back down slowly. I thought so, she said quietly. My heartbeat stumbled. You know him. She folded her hands. Your brother works here. The room suddenly felt smaller. He never told you? No. No, he had not. Because apparently my brother worked on the 17th floor of the same company I was interviewing at. Senior Creative Strategist. Fast-Track Leadership Program. Internal Keynote Speaker. And according to the woman sitting across from me, a man famous for overcoming hardship. My name is Valerie Pierce, she said calmly. I founded this company. The CEO. I nearly stopped breathing. She studied me for another moment. Then she said something I will never forget. The man your brother pretends to be walked into this room wearing safety pins. I stared at her. What does that mean? But Valerie didn't answer directly. Instead, she opened a folder on the conference table. Inside were printed employee spotlight articles. One headline read, "From Poverty to Power. How Caleb Cole Built His Future from Nothing." Another, "The Boy Who Wore Thrift Store Suits and Taught Himself Design." I felt physically dizzy, because every detail in those articles belonged to me. Community college, night shifts, second-hand laptop, learning animation online. Mine. All mine. Caleb had taken my entire life and rewritten it as his personal success story. And suddenly every memory rearranged itself. Every family dinner. Every insult. Every time they made me feel small. They weren't just favoring Caleb. They were feeding him material. Valerie slid one final document across the table. It was a recommendation email Caleb had written 6 months earlier for a promotion. One sentence highlighted in yellow. My younger brother struggled creatively growing up, so I learned early to succeed without support. I laughed. Actually laughed. Because suddenly it was too absurd not to. He stole my suffering, then used me as proof he'd overcome adversity. Valerie watched me carefully. "I need to ask you something," she said. "Did your brother know you were interviewing here?" "Yes. And the suit? My mother gave it to me after he suggested it." Valerie closed the folder slowly. Then she said, "I think your brother tried to sabotage you." And that was only the beginning. Because 2 days later, I discovered the voice messages. And they destroyed my family completely. The first clue came from my cousin Noah. He called me late Friday night. "You need to hear something," he whispered. Apparently, Caleb had been panicking since my interview. He'd called my mother 4 times in one day. Noah had overheard one conversation while visiting the house. "Make sure Ethan doesn't get comfortable there," Caleb had said. Not, "doesn't get the job." Doesn't get comfortable. Like I was an infection spreading into his territory. That phrase stayed in my head all night. The next Sunday I went back to my parents' house. Not for dinner. For proof. And sometimes the truth comes from people careless enough to believe they'll never be questioned. My mother left her iPad charging in the kitchen. Unlocked. Synced to her phone. I opened the messages. Scrolled to Caleb's name. And there it was. 3 days before my interview. "Caleb, don't let Ethan buy anything nice. If he walks in looking desperate, they won't take him seriously." I already gave him your old suit. "Caleb, good. He'll shrink in the room. He always does." I stopped breathing. Then another message. "Caleb, he forgets he's only good at this stuff because I pushed him." Another. "Caleb, if he gets hired there, people might start asking questions." Questions. Questions about what? That answer came 30 seconds later. An audio file. Sent from Caleb to my mother. I pressed play. His voice filled the kitchen. "If Ethan starts talking about community college or the freelance stuff, shut it down. That's my story now. He doesn't understand how important this is." My hand started shaking so hard I almost dropped the iPad. That's my story now. Not power. Not misunderstanding. Ownership. He knew exactly what he'd done. And worse, my mother knew too. I screenshotted everything. Sent copies to myself. Then sat at the kitchen table staring at the family photos on the wall. Every framed smile suddenly looked staged. Every Christmas card fake. I always thought Caleb was the golden child because he was smarter, more charismatic, more ambitious. But now I realized something uglier. He needed me beneath him. Because without my struggle, he had no story worth selling. And when people build identities on stolen foundations, they'll do almost anything to protect them. Even destroy family. especially family. The next morning Valerie called me personally. "Can you come in today?" Her voice sounded different. Controlled. Careful. When I arrived, HR was waiting. So was Caleb. He sat across the conference room table in a navy suit worth more than my laptop. But for the first time in my life, he looked nervous. And when Valerie pressed play on the audio recording, his entire face changed. The meeting lasted 3 hours. Excuses. Gaslighting. Fake concern. Caleb even cried at one point. Said I was unstable. Jealous. Obsessed with him. Then Valerie opened another folder. Financial reports. Apparently Caleb had also been expensing fake mentorship programs using company funds. Because once someone convinces themselves they deserve another person's life, stealing becomes easy. By the end of the meeting, HR escorted him out through the main office floor. Everyone watched. Nobody spoke. And the strangest part? He looked back at me like I had betrayed him. Not the other way around. 3 weeks later, I officially started at Alder Media Group. Different floor. Different desk. Mine. Valerie returned the pinned gray blazer in a garment bag. "I thought you might want this," she said. "I almost threw it away. But I kept it. Because that suit reminds me of something important. The problem was never that it didn't fit. The problem was that my family needed me to believe it did. And once you stop wearing the version of yourself other people stitch together for you, their whole story starts falling apart."